Got the potassium level back, 12.2.
No one has ever survived a cardiac arrest with a potassium over 11. There is absolutely no chance of recovery. I am so sorry. Amber has died.
No. It's not happening. No. So sorry.
Before we stop, do you think her sister would like a chance to say goodbye?
No, Bill shouldn't see her like this.
Okay. You can stay in here for as long as you like.
It's okay.
We are going to stop now. Resuscitation efforts discontinued, 14:51.
Baby.
Oh, sweet. I'm sorry.
Hello, all. Welcome back to What's On Tonight, a podcast with elaborate, quirky, and unpredictable conversations about TV, movies, and more. I'm Becky.
And I'm Mandy.
Tonight, we are covering The Pitt, Season 1, Episode 8, titled 2 o'clock p.m. Please note, this is a spoiler-filled podcast. So if you haven't watched the episode yet and don't want to be spoiled, come back and check us out after you finish watching. Episode 8 was written by Joe Sachs, who also co-wrote Episode 3, titled 9 a.m., and directed by Amanda Marsalis, who also directed Episode 4, titled 10 a.m. Mandy, would you like to read the synopsis for us?
I would love nothing better. Robbie cares for an elderly patient who is related to Pittsburgh's past. The team tries to revive a young drowning victim.
All right, so yay or nay? I say yay for sure. I give this 5 cut off fingertips out of 5.
Ugh.
It's a heartbreaking episode, but just perfect.
Yeah, yay for me. I don't have a nay yet for this entire series. This was another stellar episode. Really did a lot, moving the plot along. Very sad, very hard to watch, but really good.
Yeah. Well, we can jump right into the episode itself. We start with Dr. Collins in the restroom trying to pull herself together. Oh my gosh, that broke my heart watching her going through that. We talked a lot last week about women and how we pull up our bootstraps and go straight back to work. And that's exactly what she did. And that was very hard to watch. I do want to ask you, I tried to see both times when watching the episode. Did you notice, were there any signs of life on the ultrasound?
I tried to see if I could tell anything from that. I couldn't tell anything. It didn't look like it, but I don't know that that is really definitive either. Especially early on, I don't know much about ultrasound, only just from having my 2 kids. But the earlier on it is, the longer it usually would take them to find a heartbeat anyway. She got, Robbie walked in on her almost immediately. So yeah. I don't know if what they were showing was that there was no heartbeat or if it was just she didn't have a chance to really.
Okay. I just didn't know if I missed something.
No, I thought the same thing. I was double checking for it the second time I watched, and I couldn't tell one way or the other because this show loves to keep you tortured about things like this. So I still say the jury's out. We still don't know for sure.
I'm hoping there's still a chance.
Me too. And if they're not, I wish they would just let us know so I can just get on with the grieving. The show just loves to break my heart.
Oh, it broke my heart several times tonight or during this episode.
Yeah.
So when she goes on to treat Rocco, I got to say that finger procedure was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And I smiled the whole way through it, knowing you were cussing me out.
You're a ghoul.
That was super cool. I liked the chemistry between the two of them. I'm certain it probably won't amount to anything, but I thought he was a cool patient. I liked that he seemed to have genuine concern for her when he was just like, "Are you okay?" You could tell he really meant that. And I hope they end up on a date, but it probably won't amount to anything. And I also like with Rocco how they highlighted him going to trade school and that got some airtime because I mean those are honorable, much needed professions. And I was just kind of glad that they gave him a chance to talk about what he did.
Yeah, that was really cool for me, having a kid getting ready, one just getting out of college who is struggling to find work in the field that she got her degree in, and one that's getting ready to go into college this in the fall. So I loved that they showed this guy and they allowed him to not only be someone who is working in a trade, but also showing that he has dreams and ambitions outside of that trade, that he is using that trade to get himself educated for what he really wants to do down the road. I love that. I love that they talked about education. I love that they talked about the different paths that you can go to in education. I felt really great about that. I loved that they brought that up.
Yeah. Sticking with Collins, Robbie, obviously seeing her doing the ultrasound, and I'm quite certain he was very curious. The further we get into it, the less I think he's the father of her baby.
See, I'm leaning back more towards it this week. Several times throughout the episode, he kept trying to grab a right time to pull her aside and ask her about it. And now I'm leaning more back towards they are secretly together outside of the hospital.
It's quite possible that who knows with this show. The look on his face when he saw her doing the ultrasound didn't look like, I don't know if I can explain it well. His expression didn't look like, oh my gosh, we had sex. Is she pregnant? Kind of look. It just, I don't know. It was more like a friend. What's going on here? Is she okay? That's the vibe I got from it. But I don't know. We'll see.
Because I got the opposite. To me, it was more like he definitely looked like, holy crap, did I see her doing what I thought I saw her doing? And he seemed much more invested in it than just as a friend. I don't know. We'll just have to see. Come on, people. Tell us what's going on with that baby. But also, can we just talk about how everybody hits on Collins?
Well, good Lord, look at her. She's gorgeous.
She is a beautiful, beautiful woman. She really is. It's funny to me that she is so guarded about men.
The men are like, what's up?
She's catnip to them, man.
She sure is.
And I don't blame them. She is beautiful and smart and kind and compassionate and all of that stuff. I loved that he complimented her on what a great teacher she was, although I'm sure that was hurtful to her because she wants to be a mom.
I know. I need her to have a happy moment. I hope.
Yeah.
I need all of them to have a happy moment.
For sure.
So moving on from Collins to my favorite patient of the episode, Mr. Willie Alexander, who's come in because he's having some heart opportunities. I love him. He was just cool and fun, but light and so smart. And I love the way when he was talking about his own heart rate and things like that, the look on all of the doctors' faces that were working on him. They're like, were you a doctor? And they're trying to piece it all together. And then when the son shows up and tells the full story, which we'll get to in a minute, I thought that was a cool patient, a cool procedure. Before we get into more about him, I do want to talk about Dr. Langdon. I think he is such a great teacher and such a great doctor. The way he was coaching them through the procedure that he was doing, which was another really cool procedure. I think it was great acting on his part. I wanted to see what you thought about Santos when she leaves the room with the Dr. Collins patient and confides in Garcia. Since we're going to talking about Dr. Langdon now, you mentioned last week you think he might have a drug problem, and there were some things that could allude to that. I was just curious what you thought of all of that.
I think that it's definitely still up in the air. I mean, it's debatable. Dr. Garcia, I hate that woman. Sorry to the actress.
We don't like your character.
I think you did a great job of making her unlikable. But when she was laying out her case for why she thought that it might be, it absolutely sounds plausible. I no longer feel like she's just out to get him for some reason. But I think much like everything else in this show, they are deliberately leaving it ambiguous As Blanche Devereaux said once when she was talking about a good storyteller, she leaves it deliberately ambiguous so that the reader can glean from it what they will. The writers of the show are doing that as well. They're leading us down a lot of rabbit holes that may or may not be anything in the end.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm curious to see. I mean, he doesn't act like he is impaired. That was what Garcia
Not at
said
all.
at one point. He doesn't seem impaired. There have been times where looking back over other episodes that he seems jittery, but like he points out later in the episode about how often emergency room doctors get interrupted.
And the ADHD comment he made to Mohan.
Right. And that, the reason that they're so good at their job, which is funny because I've said the same thing about the reason I'm good at what I do is because I'm constantly getting interrupted and have to jump back in. And he said that they all have ADHD and they get bored doing anything else. So, I don't know that his jitteriness is drug induced or if it's just that he's a thrill junkie because he's a doctor.
Yeah. I'm hoping he doesn't have a drug problem, but
if he doesn't, I sure hope that Santos doesn't yet again embarrass herself by making a public production of something that turns out to be nothing. And
do you think that Garcia's reaction to Santos was unfair? I know you don't like Garcia, and I don't either, but I'm curious, did you think she shut Santos down too soon or?
Yes. I mean, that's one of the things I dislike about her is she's very dismissive and abrupt with her. And I still think that they have some kind of relationship outside of this hospital. And if they do, there's a power imbalance there. I think that she takes full advantage of. Think about the difference between the way Dana handled her questions, even though they were about someone that she's worked with in that ER for presumably quite a while.
Yeah, but Santos didn't spell it out for Dana like she did for Garcia.
Yeah, she didn't just flatline, but Dana's smart. And I feel like that she very much got the gist of what she was trying to ask about. And she didn't overreact or underreact. She just showed her how to get that information for herself.
Yeah. So back to Willie, we find out from Willie's son that Willie was one of the original members of the Freedom House Ambulance Service. And I am so sad to say I had absolutely no idea that this existed. And I appreciate the producers and writers of the show, especially during Black History Month and a time when people are trying to stifle Black history. I'm so glad they highlighted this. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take just a second to read some stuff I found about it. So the Freedom House Ambulance Service was the first emergency medical service in the United States to be staffed by paramedics with medical training beyond basic first aid. Founded in 1967 to serve the predominantly Black Hill District of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, it was staffed entirely by African Americans. The Freedom House Ambulance Service broke medical ground by training its personnel to previously unheard of standards of emergency medical care for patients en route to hospitals. The paramedic training and ambulance design standards pioneered in the Freedom House Ambulance Service would set the standard for emergency care nationally and even internationally. And despite its successes, the ambulance service was closed 8 years after it began operating. In 1975, the city of Pittsburgh cut their funding and subsumed its personnel and operations into a newly established citywide EMS service. Love that exists, that was real. I love that they brought it into the show. And one of my favorite things that came out of that conversation, on top of what I just said, was how Dr. Robbie got a chance to hear Willie talk about Dr. Adamson. I feel like that was very therapeutic for him to be able to do that, especially on the day he normally shuts down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I didn't know about the Freedom House either. And that was amazing. I love history. I really loved that they brought that to the fore. As you said, there are people trying to whitewash our history and take us backwards into a time when the only stories being told were those of white America. I went to the Wikipedia page and read up as much about it as I could. But I'm going to. Something I want to point out is the Freedom House was disbanded largely because of racism. Mm-hmm. It's very obvious that the mayor of Pittsburgh at the time did not like the service being around for a lot of reasons. Some of it having to do with him wanting to have that more under the control of the police department, which was predominantly white, but also just flat out racism. His opponents at the time tried to defend the program, but it took him years, but he was eventually able to defund them and subsume all of those services and steal their ideas and steal their practices and take it into city government. But a statistic I read there at the end was that in the late 1990s, you went from an all-Black ambulance crew that were pioneering the services that would eventually be modeled throughout the world. But by the end of the 1990s, 98% of the Pittsburgh Bureau of Emergency Medical Services was white.
Mm-hmm.
That is shameful, shameful. History is amazing because it's crazy when you look, especially, I never was that interested in American history until very recently when I realized that, oh my God, we're still living it. And I needed to know more about the very recent past to understand what we were going through now. I did not realize not only that it was pioneered by Black Americans, but that the ambulance services in general were such a new industry. But it made a lot of sense because I know I've told you this a million times. When I was a child, my aunt, they didn't have more than, they worked really hard, but they didn't have, they both had GEDs, my aunt and uncle that raised me. They opened an ambulance service. And I'm sure that it was because, after learning more about this, it was because that was a new booming industry where you could have people who didn't necessarily, you weren't required to have any kind of higher education or medical degree, that you could get medical training to do emergency services throughout the country. So I think I have to thank them for that, for, they didn't keep the business long, but it was a formative part of my youth. And I'm sure that it probably was an industry that boomed all over the country once they started making news throughout the world and throughout the country. I'm sure that that's probably why they had ambulance services popping up all over the place with people starting their own businesses. So thanks to them.
Yeah, very cool. Anything else about Sweet Willie and his history lesson, or anything else about the procedures or anything?
No, man, I could go on forever about that because it really was just great. I just enjoyed, among all of the horror and tragedy of this episode, I just really loved that they gave us that inspiring moment. And I just can't wait to learn more about that. It's very, very cool.
All right, so we will segue into the two extremely sad, heartbreaking stories of the episode. And we'll start with Miss Sweet Amber Phillips, the drowning victim. I applaud this show for the way they can tell a story and the way these actors suck you in to the point where I felt the exhaustion Whitaker and King were feeling of doing those chest compressions over and over again. I felt the anguish on the nurses' faces and on, Dr. Robbie's face when they knew that this was not going to end well. I felt the anguish of the mom sitting there next to her daughter asking these questions. I felt her anxiety of, are you doing everything you can? And trying to tell her kid, you're going to be okay. I felt all of that. I felt the sadness when Dr. King had to sit there with her sister, and such a great job of acting by everyone on that story. And I applaud Noah Wyle for bringing Dr. Robbie's such brilliance at dealing with a family going through a devastating thing and delivering that blow that he had to deliver so calmly and gently, saying there's nothing else we can do. We're going to stop now, and declaring that young girl dead. That whole...
Now, there's anybody with children struggles to really put into words how hard it is to watch something like that. It's scripted, but it's just the worst nightmare of every parent on the planet. I have a pool, as you know, and it scares me. My kids are older now, but I worry about my dogs because we don't have one of those hard covers. So I can't ever leave the house without my dogs being locked in a crate because I'm so worried that they're going to fall through. I can't imagine how anxious I would have been if my kids were really small when we had that. We would have absolutely had a hardcover. But even that, accidents happen. And you just think about that poor grandmother I wonder if they're going to be in future episodes, if we're going to see the fallout of how the parents are going to deal with the grandmother, since she was the one that was supposed to be watching them, which of course we know it can happen to anyone. Kids are quick. Like from the minute they start walking, you can't always protect them from every single thing, but logic doesn't always play out when you're dealing with something like that. So I wonder if we're going to see the parents express any kind of anger at the grandmother. I wonder how, if the other daughter,
Ella,
we find out Amber was rescuing her from the pool when she drowned, if we're going to see any impact when she finds out her sister has passed, the way that Dr. King sat with her and told her to tell the bear everything that she wanted to say to her sister. And she had to be thinking of her own sister.
Oh, you could see it all over her face. I think about when she first jumped up and ran out of the room, I was like, she's not going to be able to stay focused on the job. But when she came back with that bear and I realized what she was doing, I have no doubt that at some point in her life, she's not necessarily, maybe not about death, but she's done something like that with her sister to make her sister feel comfortable if she can't be there or something like that. And she's taking that knowledge and using it to help this little girl. And I hope Taylor Dearden gets an Emmy nomination for her acting. They usually do it, episodes are submitted. I hope someone submits her for an Emmy nomination for this episode because she was absolutely brilliant.
Oh, she should. There's like 3 episodes, I think, that I would put her up against anybody. It's so interesting because, as we've talked about a lot, she's probably on the neurodivergent spectrum somehow. And for a group of people who are often portrayed as being emotionless or unemotional or robotic because they process their emotions differently. It's amazing how she seems to be one of the staff that is, even though emotion is uncomfortable to her, you can tell high anxiety moments are very difficult for her. She seems to have more emotional intelligence than almost anybody else on the staff. Like these just quiet moments where she knows, maybe the better way to put it is that she knows how she is good at helping people learn to process their emotions in very difficult times.
Yeah.
And I hope they talk more about that. If they ever do get into a storyline where they acknowledge that she's neurodivergent and they talk about how did she get to be so good at that? Because I know people who have gone on to be brilliant, have amazing careers, and just be absolutely brilliant human beings that start out as children having a lot of difficulty with communication. But through therapies, they've sometimes, like her, they end up being some of the most emotionally intelligent people in the room. And I don't know, I hope that at some point they have some, because right now with our public school system, especially, a lot of those types of services are under threat of being eliminated. Yeah. So I hope at some point they explore a storyline to show how Dr. King got to be so exceptional at living around her neurodiversity, if that is what's going on.
Yeah. I just want to say before we move on, I made a note here. Every person's face in that room showed the pure sadness and emotion of what they already knew. That girl was gone. And it makes you think that ERs, emergency departments, emergency rooms see this kind of thing every day, and it's a part of their professional lives. But even they aren't made of steel, and cases like this get to them just like they do for us. That just really made me think about what these professionals deal with on a daily basis, and how in an emergency room, you don't have time. Like you said, they're getting pulled from place to place to place. They made a point to tell us that. Well, you have to, move on. And they moved on from the death of this poor young girl to the next storyline I want to jump into, unless you have anything else you want to add about Amber, is the Nick storyline. So anything else you want to say there?
No, just that I think that this show just is great at showing you that being in the emergency room is often just a day full of just trauma after trauma after trauma that you have to absorb because that's your job. And, I think I understand better why so many people have mental health struggles in that field, because how could you not?
Yeah. Well, great acting by all
for sure
to show us what that's like. So then we move from Amber passing to Nick Bradley, I did not know. I learned so much in this episode. I had no idea that the honor walk was a thing. I didn't know that was something that they did. And first, I'm glad the parents agreed to the organ donation. And I thought it was a beautiful moment when the entire staff and all the friends and family of Nick and his family lined the halls and they wheeled him out to the ambulance. I thought the Steelers blanket was a nice touch to represent the city. And, my mom is a huge Steelers fan, so that just made me think of her. What really got to me in this was the parents. The acting between them was just so good. But when the mom seemed almost anxious that Robbie wasn't going to be able to be there when Nick's organs were harvested, which shows how well he built a relationship with his family, and all of that conversation we had about him taking all of this time and is this the right thing to do or the wrong? We now see how that helped this family move on to this decision. And then he looks at her and he says, well, a lot of us would like to attend Nick's funeral. And the look of like almost amazement or awe on the mom's face that even though their son was moving on from their care, they were still going to be there in some fashion was absolutely beautiful. And then the walk to the ambulance was just, what a way to end the episode. And whoever made that choice and the way that the lady who directed the episode, the way that she filmed the staff and the characters. Did you see the daughter, the young girl who was in there with him that almost died? Did you see that she was there?
No, I was wondering about that. I didn't see her.
Yeah, I went back a second watch to make sure that, yeah, she was standing there in the line.
Some of those people I didn't recognize at all. And I thought, like, I knew about honor walks, but now I wonder, like, do they just get anybody that's around and ask them if they would like to be part of it, if they happen to be there? I wonder what the rules are. If I would imagine if I were there and I saw something like that happen, like the loss of a life that age, it's always a tragedy. And somebody that young and in that way, it is a tragedy. And for the parent to have to go within a short span of time from acknowledging, the reality that their child is gone to now that child's body is going to be taken and their organs are going to be harvested because this is a choice that they made. And you have to come to terms with honoring that. I mean, I would want to be part of it, whether I was just there because I had a kidney stone or what have you. If I were there, I would very much be honored to stand witness to somebody's sacrifice like that.
Absolutely.
Because I just noticed there were a lot of people in there that they didn't look like they were staff. So I was wondering, like, do they just ask anybody who happens to be around? Do they want to be part of it? But just watching people, how like in the last episode, we had that great human moment where the Nepali lady and the guy that rescued her had their moment of, it was like that. It was this, you just see these people that you may never see again in the show, have no idea really who they are. But not only were they there, but they were reaching out and patting the parents on the arm and touching them and making connection with them, because it is just such a human tragedy. And it just is an equalizer. You don't, whatever your politics are, whatever your religion is, your race, whatever, when you see something like that, I think the overwhelming majority of us just want to do something to comfort in any way, shape, or form that we can. I don't know. That killed me, but it also was beautiful and inspiring at the same time.
One of the fan pages that we follow posted a really great article from TV Insider. And I'm not going to read the whole article, but every article I'm referencing will be posted in the show notes. So you can just click on any of those links and get the full article. But I did find this very interesting. And a lot of it goes along with what you just said on the honor walk. So here's a quote from Noah Wyle on the honor walk. He said, "We watched a lot of footage on honor walks," Wiley, who also serves as an executive producer, tells Insider TV. "Honor walks are pretty spectacular to behold. The concept of organ donation is such an interesting one to delve into in real time because these decisions often have to be made very quickly because of the timeliness of needing to get organs harvested in order to get them procured and transported. You're talking about having to make the most difficult and painful decisions so fast. And Wiley also notes it was also a really good and gut-wrenching way to extend the fentanyl tragedy storyline even farther to try to find some aspects of meaning and value in the tragedy, in that even though they're going to lose their son is going to make it possible for 18 other people to maybe not have similar fates. The honor walk sort of underscores the tragedy, but also the heroism and bravery of the decision and the humanity of how this boy's eyes, liver, lungs, and other organs are going into other people. This is the part that really got me. We can be interchanged like that. You get underneath the surface of our skin color. I can have your heart. You can have my kidney. We can exchange these things and survive them. I think that's an incredible thesis to underscore. You want to talk about our differences all day long. We can save each other's lives on the most biological level, but we can't seem to do it on a practical level. And the rest of the article is great, but I really wanted to highlight the amount of research that went into it, but that profound statement about how our lives are interchangeable and we can save each other on a biological level, but not on a practical level, because it just speaks to so much of what's happening in this world right now. So I thought it was worth reading.
Yeah, I tell you what, Becky, I was going to say this to the end to tell you that, believe it or not, Noah Wyle has sent me a friend request on Facebook, and I am certain that it is 100% legit. And I wasn't sure if I was going to accept it, but now that I know what a brilliant soul he is, no, I'm
Do you
just
understand
kidding.
why I love him?
That is amazing. This show absolutely gives me a better appreciation for him as an actor, a producer, a director, a writer, because I think he contributes to the writing as well. I think his hand is kind of in all of this, and I definitely do think that he is brilliant. This is a great, great show. It's very different. It's not my forte, which I've said I know a million times, but it's genuinely just not like anything I've ever really invested a lot of time in before. I'm blown away every single week. I can't imagine anybody saying anything bad about this show.
I can't either.
Something before we move on, though.
Okay.
This is going to be tough to get out. You were talking about how they were panicked almost for Dr. Robbie to no longer be part of their son's care or be there when his organs are harvested. When they wheeled him out and they put him in and they shut the door and his parents are in that car, what I felt was the silence of what the rest of their life is going to be like, or at least then going forward for a long time going forward. Whenever you lose someone, I think you probably also understand that impulse that they had. To them, their son is still alive. Still, that body is their son's body that they have taken care of their whole lives. And to them, he is still the same boy, and they still want him to be loved and cared for. Even though they've gone through all of this, the reality has not set in, because I think, as most of us have experienced, when you lose someone, a lot of times through the loss, the funeral arrangement and all of that, it's tough, but it's almost like you're doing things. You're in a cocoon, you're moving, there's forward motion, there's activity, you don't really have time to process. The really, really, really shitty part about grief is when that ambulance door shuts. And now there is no more busy emergency room. There is no more discussion of what we're going to do. None of that. It's just going to be you and your grief. And I don't know how they did it. The shot of them getting in their car and shutting it, you could just feel how the next few weeks and days and hours are going to play out for that family. And that's when the grief is really, really going to hit. I wanted to pray for them.
Yeah. It's a very good observation, and you're right. I think about when my brother passed away and I got the call from my sister-in-law, and it was, I know I called you and told you what happened and had a mini breakdown, and it was the realization I have to call my parents and tell them their son is gone. I have to call my brother and tell him his brother is gone. I have to do, and I got busy, and that's all I did from the day he passed until the day we had his service was plan and do and make arrangements and be sure this was happening and that was happening. And I was talking to Connor my son several months ago, I was just feeling around the time Jason had passed away a year later. And I still have we each got a small vial of his ashes. And I was just thinking about him, and I cried. I really broke down and cried. And I realized that that was the first time that I had actually stopped to really process that he was gone and process all of those emotions. So what you say makes absolute sense. And that is something that, when death occurs, you are surrounded by friends and family and loved ones who are lifting you up. But what happens when the service is over, when the flowers just stop coming or whatever it is, and you have to forge on with the rest of your life with the absence of someone that you love dearly. I did not think of that, and I think that's a great observation, and they did do a great job of displaying that. Well done.
Yeah, almost too good.
Yeah. Everything in this episode was too good.
They're going to be getting a bill for my therapy.
I think based on a lot of the feedback, I think a lot of people are sitting on their therapist couch, or will be in the next few days, over this episode.
We don't know if Collins lost the baby or not.
And I'll bet you every therapist is like, I don't know either.
As we've discussed, my therapist watches the show, so I don't know if she's listening to the pod or not. But Tiffany, if you are, we're going to be bringing this one up.
Mandy's coming.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on. If you're ready to move on to chart notes, is there anything else about the previous mentioned stuff you want to add?
Oh, no, man. I feel like this is like that part in Hamilton where he says, can we get back to politics after they've been talking about his son dying? Please.
Louie's back.
Louie.
Bless his heart. My brother was an alcoholic, and it's a horrible disease, and I hate seeing anyone suffer from it. And you would be surprised at how many people it affects, people close to you that you don't even know are going through it. So my heart goes out to Louis for the fact that he's suffering from something like that. But I do love the way the doctors, it's like your friend went out and got drunk one night and comes home stumbling drunk, and you've got to take care of them. That's how it felt.
Yeah, they're so non-judgmental.
Yeah. I liked the back and forth between Louis and the doctors. It was nice to see him again.
Yeah, you'd like to think that a guy like that seems to be a genuinely sweet person who just has a disease that's out of control, that if he's a regular flyer there, that they treat him with dignity and care, and even, joke around with him and have seemingly no judgment about the fact that he's in there all the time for his alcoholism. No, it is. I enjoy that too. I like old Louie.
So Javati, I want to talk a minute about Javati. She did so good with the stomach patient that was her mother's patient. Santos Law, her and Garcia felt to me like they were being bullies or playing a joke on Javati by leaving her with this, as Garcia put it, I think, out of control stomach patient or whatever. It really annoyed me. But I'm so glad that even though I had to look away, the second she looked at that woman's foot and saw two little pricks, I knew some kind of bug or spider was coming. And I looked away when she pulled it out of her shoe. I didn't, but I'm so glad she had that moment. And then when her mom comes down and Javati's like, no, I figured it out. I'm good, Mom. But I loved her figuring it out, fixing the patient, and being able to do it, especially that it was her mom's patient, and a big middle finger to Santos and Garcia too.
I thought her mom looked proud of her at the end. I thought when she was tough, pretty clearly what's between them is that she's been, or at least that's the strong indication you get from the script or from the storyline so far, is that the problem is that her mother has put really, really high expectations on her daughter. My friend Zara and I, Zara's from Iran, and we were talking about this show actually, and I was talking about how cool it was. Like I mentioned last week, that they had 3 different women from the Indian subcontinent that were all just actors in that scene. And you just don't see that a lot. And she pointed out to me that something that most Americans don't understand is how much pressure parents in those cultures traditionally put on their children to be high achievers. And there's, a lot of stuff that's been written over the years about why in immigrant communities in general, that's true. And a lot of it having to do with you having to be 10 times better than the average white guy here in America to get ahead. So I think she's tough on her. But I did think there at the end when she told her, no, I've got this and this is what's going on. And it's not what you're saying, it's the bite. She gave her that little smile at the end, which I think for her mom is the equivalent of a big hug and a high five. May not be enough, but it showed that she was proud of her daughter.
I just think of like you and Ava. If that were you and Ava, y'all be high-fiving each other. No, you'd have her up on your shoulders, or maybe the other way around because she's a lot taller than you are.
I'm the opposite of a tiger mom.
Yeah. So that's what I mean when I say it's not this, hoorah, happy mother-daughter moment. I need Santos to stop calling these people by these horrible nicknames that she's got.
Yeah, it's a bummer that they clearly have a kind of a tense relationship, and she's probably under a mountain of expectations from her highly successful mom. That's a big difference between me and Ava. I'm not a world-renowned, what is she, internist? What is her mom's specialty? I can't remember.
Oh, she's fancy.
Yeah, she's a fancy doctor. Yeah, that's an official degree, right? Like it fancy is. Doctor. Yeah,
my dad has it.
He's the fancy doctor too.
No.
Now I'm picturing your dad with like a white coat on, but like wearing like a jaunty hat with a feather,
a monocle.
Yeah, and a monocle. I just cracked myself up with that. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I was proud for her getting that win. That's good for her. Good for her confidence. Bugs don't bother me. That part, I was like nothing. I was like, yes, thank God, a spider bite. 10 million times rather have that than somebody's nasty finger poking through.
Give me bone popping through your flesh. Don't give me spiders. Don't give me spiders.
We'd make a good doctor between us.
We would. But we would have to be hired as one person. She'd be like, I'm going to take all the insect stuff. And I'll be like, give me everything else, bloody. I will say, though, I talk a good game. I love to watch that stuff. But having seen that stuff, some of that stuff in a hospital environment when I was getting my CNA license, I could not do it because the smell. Seeing it is one thing. The smell is another thing. And that is not something I could deal with. So I'm like the dog or the cat who sees the squirrel through the window and it's like, oh yeah, you better back off. But that's because there's a wall between us. Yeah.
That's funny. Oh, one of the other things I thought about with that patient when she was screaming and hollering and just basically cussing out anybody that got close to her because she was in so much pain. It reminded me of my one, please God, let it be the only one I ever get a kidney stone, because it hurt so bad. I didn't know what it was. I got up like 4 a.m. and as soon as I stood up, it felt like something was ripping my insides out, like a claw had just reached in and was squeezing my organs. I thought it was appendicitis. And we were on the way to the hospital. And this isn't a symptom that everybody gets with kidney stones, but I've found out that it is a fairly common one. The worst part of it beyond the pain to me was throwing up. And I mean, I could not stop throwing up. And we got to the emergency room and these nurses kept following me around, trying to put a bag in my face. And it was also during COVID. So first I've got this mask on my face. And then secondly, they are following me around with barf bags, admonishing me to throw up into the bag. And I couldn't breathe. And I was in excruciating pain. And I did not want that thing in my face. And God knows what I said to those women, but it was a lot of what that girl was. It was pretty much fuck off. But I needed air. So I went outside and just started throwing up all over the front of it. Well, I'm not done. There's a point. I'll stop saying pew. We'll say fluffy kitties. So me and the fluffy kitties went back in the back and it was a good hour and a half of them trying to figure out what was going on with me and just more of that and more of that. And I don't remember what I said, but I do know that when the drugs finally kicked in, the women came back into the office like they were having shift change and the nurse brought in the new girl that was taking taken over to explain. And I was like, hey, thank you so much. I appreciate everything you guys have done. And Eric's just sitting over there like, oh God. And when they left, he looked at me and he goes, she brought her in here and was like, this bitch right here. You better watch out for her. And then she comes in and all of a sudden I'm like Mr. Rogers over there. But pain will make you a different person. And my reaction was all just like from the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Becky, I remember being on the way there and having this thought, if I jump out of the car into traffic now, this pain will end. And it wasn't like I wanted to die or I was suicidal.
No, you just wanted to stop.
Yeah. And that when you are in that kind of pain, your brain is just not functioning. I also laughed when they asked her if she was allergic to anything. And she said, codeine, it makes me throw up. And who was it with Giovanni that said, that's not a symptom or that's not an allergy, that's a side effect?
Yeah.
That made me laugh because for years, I remember when you got sick a few months ago and I told you about when I got my parotid gland got infected when I was like 19 and they gave me codeine for that. And for years, I thought I was allergic to codeine because it made me
told
sick.
you I can't take codeine because I'm allergic to codeine because it makes me throw up. And now I'm like, oh my God, I said on my medical file that I can't take codeine when in all reality, I just need to take a Dramamine before I take the codeine.
Right.
That was a very funny moment. All right. Anything else on that? We're running long.
Nope.
And you're welcome, everyone, for hearing all about our kidneys. So Rita came back. I told you she just needed a nap, and God bless her. It was so quiet. I just dozed off. And I was the relief on Dr. King's face when she saw her. And then I love Dr. King sitting with Kiara and helping them understand options that are out there. And Ginger is the sweetest woman on the planet. And I don't know if we're going to see her again, but I'm going to miss her.
Me too. I love that moment when she just loves being helpful to people. Just the genuine love that she has for taking care of people. And when she pushed the tissues over, again, this is one of those just brilliant little acting choices that Taylor Dearden makes that she, is probably on the spectrum. She's uncomfortable with emotion, but she's learned to take care. Like she's learned people that are emotional like that.
It's like Sheldon.
Yes.
When his mom taught him when somebody's in distress and they come to your house, you offer a hot beverage.
Right.
That's very much like what she did with those tissues. She was taught tissues are what you do for people who are crying. Yeah, that's true.
And she just looked so happy to be able to do it. And it was a sweet moment we really needed in this episode. I will say it was great that they were able to offer her all of those services and the relief and the happiness on her daughter's face when she realized that she was going to get help. Now, I wonder how realistic that is in real life. I certainly hope, and I know this is a very well-researched show, so I'm assuming that for the Pittsburgh area, at least, that is probably very true. Well, and I don't know that it's available everywhere because each state, I don't know exactly. What I have learned is that the thing that I fear most about getting older isn't aging, it's having to deal with Medicare because I've had just a very little bit to do with it, trying to help my mother-in-law through getting some services for her husband he had cancer and that destroyed his body in a lot of ways. And now he's got very limited mobility and they do not have nearly as many services available, at least in Florida, options to caregivers as Ginger was going to have. I'm curious now if that is a realistic portrayal. I wish we had somebody to ask how realistic that would be for someone in her situation, at least in the Pittsburgh area, and if that is common throughout the country or if it really is dependent on what state that you're in.
Well, like you said, it's a well-researched show, so I'm sure a lot of what they brought up is probably maybe related to that specific area, but it's sad all that stuff isn't available everywhere.
Right. I guess that's what I'm saying is that if that is a realistic portrayal of what you could find available as a caregiver to somebody that is an elderly parent that is experiencing dementia, I am real sad for the rest of the country that is not the norm.
Yeah. Well, I was almost really sad for the rest of the country and us because I thought Myrna was gone, but thank God Myrna is okay. That's all I wanted to say about that.
She's so funny. I love that woman. I'm going to really hope. I don't know how they do it, but I hope if they bring her back for season 2. But you know what it reminded me of is another personal moment when my grandmother was passing away. The last day of her life, she was allowed to come home, and she passed on my aunt's couch. There was this moment where she was lying there, and we knew it was going to be soon. And I was very, very close to my grandmother. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching her chest, and I'm watching it go up and down, up and down. And then it stops for a while. It felt like forever. And so I started to yell, "Mom." And when I did, my grandmother woke up and she looked at me and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I thought you were dead." And she goes, "You almost killed me."
Oh.
And she passed a few hours later, but we had a big laugh about that. So it's kind of a funny memory for me now.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm sorry that happened, but that is a sweet.
It wasn't great. She laughed, I laughed. It was very funny. Yeah. I know McKay's relief at that moment.
Yes. All of our relief.
All of our relief.
You don't take Myrna.
I'll fight you for Myrna.
I don't want to spend too much time on it because I think it's going to unfold a lot more next week or in the next few episodes. But I'm very curious about this whole Piper and Laura, the boss, and Winky Finger's assistant.
Yeah, that's weird.
Storyline. I want to give kudos to McKay and how brilliant she is on picking up on weird things.
Yeah.
As a doctor. And I love how Dana had her back. Love how Dana has everyone's back, but she's like, "Oh, this is what you need. Let's go. No questions asked." She's there for her. Do you think it's sex trafficking?
I don't know. I don't know what else it could be. I'm very
the
curious.
boss was pregnant. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I did notice that. And I don't know. It's weird. It's a strange one. I really don't know where they're going to go with this.
Same. So I didn't want to spend too much time speculating, but I'm very curious.
Something was very freaky about it.
Oh, yeah, very. So my last chart note, and this is just a nod to the people, the actors and actresses who play the nurses. I'm so glad each patient, you got to see so much more of the nurses. They were highlighted a lot more. I mean, we see a lot of Dana, but you got Mateo when Amber was, the potassium from Amber, Princess when they were dealing with the Sweet Willie, Donnie when they were dealing with the stomach patient, and Perla was kind of in and out of a lot of the rooms. It just was really nice to see them highlighted in so many of these scenes in this episode. The entire cast is amazing, but I was glad to get to see a little bit more of them.
Princess is low-key one of my favorites, as the kids say.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's funny. I love thinking back to that when she was giving Robbie's kid the condom and talking about being at the
that moment.
It cracked me up.
Well, my final thoughts, I wrote, this episode broke me. I sat in front of my TV, wiping tears away for a good 10 minutes, just trying to wrap my head around everything that happened in this episode. I had to really psych myself up to rewatch, to be able to take notes. I could go on for days about this one, and I feel like we have. But since we've gone on long enough, I'm just going to say, well done to the cast, production crew, writers, directors, set design, everyone who works on this show. Every week gets better and better, and the stories told are so real, so raw, and shine such a great light on so many things that this country needs to see.
Yeah, what Becky said. Ditto. No, I mean, last week was harder for me than this week was, but this week was another brutal one. And I'm just genuinely in awe of how well they're telling this story, and want to affirm everything you said: the cast, the crew, the sets, the directors, the writing, all of it. It's just amazing.
All right. So we have some show notes or news, I guess, however you want to look at it. Just a few excerpts from some articles that we're going to read. Again, links to these articles will be posted in show notes so you can read the whole articles. But these are just a few points that we wanted to highlight. And an article published by Yahoo News Canada, written by, and I apologize if I butcher her last name, Elisabetta Bianchen. She wrote, among the highlights from the Pitt, from its fast pace to its nuanced characters, at a panel discussion last month, the cast celebrated the show pushing against gender norms we see in other medical dramas. I feel like if this was made a while ago, this would have been a young man playing this character. Aziz told journalists at the panel about playing Victoria Javati. And also, there's so many elements to her that are really pop culture wise quite masculine. Like she has a crush on somebody and she goes for it. And it's embarrassing, but it is what it is. It's so exciting to get to play that. And I've never had a character where I've tried to build references and it's all been boys.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Not only would she have been a male character, but her mother would have been a father.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. So then we've got Issa Briones talking about her character. And Briones added that she feels particularly proud to represent a Filipino woman working in healthcare, making the show more reflective of real life emergency room. We talked about this last week. She said, I feel very proud to be part of a medical show that really showcases the diversity that does exist in the medical field and is often not represented on TV. Briones said, I am Filipino, so many of my friends and family are nurses in the ER field, and I've never seen Filipinos portrayed. She's right. There are a lot of Filipinos in the nursing industry, particularly. And it's just so crazy, she says, because they're one of the biggest populations of medical professionals. And it's so disheartening. I asked to change my last name to represent my background, and they said yes. And I'm so grateful for that. And I get to go home to my aunts, my titas. They're going to be like, that's us. That's us. We see ourselves finally. And I'm so grateful.
I love that.
Yeah, we clocked that too.
Yeah.
You know, good for her for making that point that she wanted to change her character's last name to reflect her heritage, and good for them for listening to her.
Yeah. Both sides of that that's really very cool. So another good article, the New York Times posted an article written by Reggie Ugwu on the realness of the show. In an interview, Gimmel and Wells said the aim was to create as authentic a portrayal as possible. Recent changes to the real-world culture surrounding medicine, the decline of primary care, the enduring trauma of the pandemic, the creeping privatization of hospitals lent themselves to a different, more grounded conception of drama. And the fact that the show is on Max, which permits a degree of graphic language and imagery, fake penises, that's not in the article, I said that is not possible on a broadcast network, encouraged a more gloves-off approach to the writing. We wanted to differentiate by not cutting corners on the medicine, Gimmel said, sitting next to Wells during a video call from Los Angeles. The drama is always going to be there in the reality of a place like the emergency department. Wells noted that the realism of the storytelling also helped make the characters more relatable. These are not people who are living a glamorous life and driving a fancy car, he said. These are people who are doing a public service and dedicating themselves to helping people who are really in need.
Also mentioned in that article are the number of real-life members of the medical profession who work with the producers, which is not a shock at all of how well-researched it clearly is.
Yeah.
The medical cases are scripted by the writer and producer Joe Sachs, another ER alumnus who was an emergency room doctor before he began producing television shows. Wow, what a life.
Yeah.
A team of medical consultants, most of whom actively practice, then write detailed notes and choreography explaining what treatment should be administered and how. On the set, the consultants coach the lead actors through their performances and line delivery, and several of the background actors who appear on screen are actually nurses in real life. That's not a shock to me. Reading that, I was having that thought this week about how they have to be working very closely with medical professionals because the details are just too spot on.
Mm-hmm.
And the article goes on, there's a lot of prep work involved, much more than I even expected, said Dr. Elizabeth Ferreira, an emergency room doctor in Los Angeles who works as a consultant on the show. What supplies are needed? What prosthetics need to be made? Is there nudity? What should be on the screens and the monitors? There's so many nuances that go into bringing the cases to fruition.
You know, a lot of medical dramas out there get flack because they're not realistic. And that was one of the things I loved so much about ER, and understanding now that Sachs was a doctor himself, why I liked so much of that. Yeah, there was drama, but it felt like a real day in an emergency room. And I'd love it even more with this show. So I just wanted to highlight the work that goes into making that happen, but also the real life medical community is out there saying how accurate it is and how refreshing it is to see that on TV. Before we end this part, I do want to say there was one doctor who said sometimes it's almost too real that he has to after an episode, he has to change the channel and watch Lost or something like that to clear his head because it brings up a lot of personal dealings and traumas that he's had to deal with. So that's how on point the show is. So again, all of these articles that we've talked about, all will be we'll post links to all of them in the show notes. So those who are interested can read them. They're all really good.
He should watch something that just has nothing to do with medical reality like Grey's Anatomy.
100,000 trillion %.
I just wanted to get in a dig at Grey's Anatomy.
You know how much, you know how I feel
I know.
about that.
That was a gimme for you.
High five.
Yeah.
So we got some really good feedback.
Yay.
On the last few episodes. Maybe you want to start?
Yeah. Mary Warden Good from Facebook wrote on episode 8, the honor walk was beautiful. The drowning victim was heartbreaking. The history lesson from the OG paramedic, the older lady in a wheelchair who is always handcuffed to a wheelchair, giving the young doctor a fright was kind of funny. Such a wonderful show. And Linda Morrison added to Mary's comment, I never caught the reason why she's confined to the wheelchair. Is she handcuffed? So much going on that I missed a few details. Girl, you and me both. But yes, Myrna is handcuffed, and we all want to know why. Becky says it's just Myrna murdering.
Myrna's gonna Myrna. Mary did add that she thinks it's because she wanders, and so that's why they have to handcuff her to the chair, which would make perfect sense. I could see Myrna wandering into a strip club and hitting that buffet.
Right. I am going to be very disappointed if it's probably just so that she doesn't wander, but I'm going to be so disappointed if it's anything less than Myrna is a notorious bank robber.
Well, she says she killed her husband.
Right. Or that she's got some dead husbands in her past. You know, one of my few podcasts that I listen to outside of ours is Snapped. I'm wanting a Myrna episode, what she's been up to. I love that woman.
I do too. Erica Land also Facebook wrote, and Erica, I just want to say, when I saw your comment, it brought so much joy to my heart because you are me when I give feedback on TV episodes that people are podcasting on. Thank you for all of this. And please keep it coming. So she wrote, my thoughts on tonight's episode. I'm so happy that Rita came back for her mom. I was getting worried. I'm happy it was just a misunderstanding and a much needed nap for her. I really hope Rita and Ginger take the offered help. I know it's hard to ask for help or receive help when you're being the only one taking care of someone. I loved hearing about Freedom House. I'll definitely be doing some more research. As soon as Dr. McKay said she hadn't heard of the town the young female patient was from, I didn't notice that. Along with her not having a cell phone, my thoughts went to that she must be Amish. She may have gone to Rumspringa and got caught up with the trafficking woman / boss. Did you notice when her boss stood up, she was pregnant? I did notice she was pregnant, but I didn't catch that McKay got weird when she didn't. Nice catch.
You know, but if she is, that is a great thought that she might be young Amish because she kind of has that look. But then I'm like, maybe the lady is trying to protect her from the Amish, which we probably don't want to go down that rabbit hole this late in the episode. But there's some real problems with women being abused, especially sexual abuse victims in the Amish community and them being ignored. So I don't know. That's interesting. But go ahead. Sorry, Becky.
Very, very interested, Erica. That's I'll keep an eye on that. She goes on to say, Dr. King bringing Bella the teddy bear to speak to. It was so sweet and heartbreaking. Speaking of this case, can we please stop having Dr. Whitaker do chest compressions on all these patients they lose? I feel so bad for the young man. Amen. I felt his exhaustion. And I think at one point, it almost looked like he was crying when he was doing that. So
his arms are tired. His arms got to be tired by now.
Oh, yeah. So she goes on about Dr. Whitaker. I want to know Maury. I want to know more of his backstory and home life. From the first or second episode, when he's told about the sandwich cart, he looks around and pockets an extra for himself. And then he eats the Primanti sandwich. Say that word for me. Voraciously. Did I say that right?
That's right.
At the computer in a more recent episode. Look at you, Erica.
Man, you are sharp.
Seriously, come on this podcast.
Amen.
I'm very much enjoying this series. I really feel like I'm inside this environment with these doctors, nurses, and patients. I'm so happy to hear they've been picked up for a second season. Us too. Keep up the great work on the podcast too. Oh, thank you so much, Erica. That was all amazing. And you really do have a good eye. So please keep the feedback coming.
Yeah, that was really cool. At Linda 1541 from YouTube wrote on last week's episode, love this show with a big heart emoji. And she also wrote to us on Instagram regarding episode 6. She says, I love your podcast. I'll leave a review if I can figure out how. I feel you, girl. I had the same problem.
Yeah.
I'm from Pittsburgh. That's why I started watching the show. I love that they had sandwiches from Primanti's. They are great. I want one of those.
They look so good. We're going to have to create a budget where we just put money away and we go to Pittsburgh and have a sandwich at Primanti's. And we take my mama so we can take her to a Steelers game.
We'll just fly in, do that, jet set like we do, eat the sandwich.
Right. That's why I said we're going to have to create a budget.
Yeah.
Tell Eric it's time to pony up some of those frequent flyer points.
Yeah.
So at Cola2178 from YouTube wrote to us about episode 6. I love you guys. Great coverage, and I appreciate your insight. Thank you. Thank you all so much for writing in. I cannot tell you what it means to us to hear from our listeners and to be getting feedback, and just we're so glad y'all are along for this ride with us, and we hope you'll keep it coming. Want to thank the Pitt Fanpage, and we also want to thank the Pitt with Noah Wyle on Max, which is another great fan page. They too are being so amazing, allowing us to post our episodes and feedback posts and all that good stuff on their page. Thank you. You guys are a big reason why we're getting all the new listeners, and we greatly appreciate it. And I will link both pages in our show notes to both fan pages, so please check them both out and give them a like. They both have great content and articles. A lot of the articles we reference come from them.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I mean, really touching base and building a little bit of community. I've enjoyed that the last few weeks. I don't know if you go back and listen to some of our older episodes, you may notice that we've really started to use some of their resources to flesh out some of the details of the show and to find new and interesting things to talk about each week. So I really appreciate them very, very much. They didn't have to let us join in on their creation there, and they've both been very, very welcoming. So yes, thank you. I want to add my thanks to that as well.
Yeah. If you would like to leave us some feedback or just say hi, you can send us an email or a voice message as an attachment to what's on tonight 2@gmail.com. And that's what's on tonight, the number 2@gmail.com. You can visit our Facebook page where there will be a post for the next episode, and you can leave feedback in the comment section or send us a message through Facebook Messenger. We can also be found on Instagram at What's On Tonight Podcast 2. And that's at What's On Tonight Podcast and the number 2. We would greatly appreciate it if you leave a review, comment, like, and or share on your podcast listening app of choice. So let's head over to the waiting room. I want to hang out with Earl, and we can talk about podcast recommendations, good TV, movies, or anything else that you want to share. What do you got, Mandy?
You know, the only thing this week is, I think if you haven't watched the SNL Homecoming concert or the SNL 50th anniversary special that was like 3 hours long, you know, do yourself a favor and watch them. It's funny because Eric and I famously do not listen to any of the musical guests ever in a Saturday Night Live episode, but I watched that whole dang concert and it was incredible. It was funny. They had Will Ferrell and Anna Gasteyer on doing one of their old bits, which just had me in tears. But more than that, the music was just amazing. And it was surprisingly full of protest art, really, throughout the whole thing. Just the choices that the musical guests were making were very much designed to inspire people out there who are feeling a little bit discouraged with our current political situation. So that was great. And then the 50th anniversary special with all the skits and the older people coming back from other past cast members and they building it in with new cast members and the special guest stars. I was crying laughing for 3 hours. So if you're a fan of Saturday Night Live at all, I'd say check it out. It's some great, much needed comic relief. It's a good 6 hours of comic relief for you.
As far as podcasts, I can be heard on Adrenaline Cinema podcast, Panels to Pixels podcast, and here on What's On Tonight podcast. As far as podcast recommendations, Adrenaline Cinema podcast, Mark and I are going to be covering Apple TV's new movie, The Gorge. We'll be recording that tomorrow. If you haven't watched the movie and have Apple TV, it's a pretty good movie. I was surprised. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. And we are excited to share our thoughts with everyone on that. So I will let you know when it's posted. And the only TV recommendation I have outside of the show that we're covering is to tell you, if you aren't watching Paradise on Hulu starring Sterling K. Brown, please watch Paradise on Hulu starring Sterling K. Brown. It is so good. So very, very good. So lastly, we just want to give a big thank you to Mark and Pirate Core Entertainment for giving us this platform. Please visit the Pirate Core website. It can be found on our Facebook page, and there you can find out about our podcast as well as other podcasts like the Slay Lounge podcast with Billy and Will. And you can find other projects that Mark is working on.
Well, that wraps up our coverage of episode 8 of The Pit. We will be back next week where we will break down episode 9 titled 3 p.m.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. And every day might not be good, but there is something good in every day. Be sure to find that good and hang on to it. I'm Becky.
And I'm Mandy.
We'll catch you next week when we grab the remote and see what's on tonight. Bye!
Bye, Felicia.